The night is already too quiet. Snow falls thick and soundless, swallowing the village in white. Lanterns flicker behind shuttered windows. No one is outside. Then the bells begin to ring. Not church bells, lower, heavier, metal scraping against metal. Chains. A child peers through a crack in the wooden door, breath fogging the glass. Somewhere in the dark, something is moving, slowly, deliberately, dragging iron through snow. A shape emerges at the edge of the firelight. Tall, bent, horned. And suddenly, the adults are shouting. Doors slam, candles are blown out. Because everyone in the village knows what this sound means. Krampus has arrived. And for most of Europe's history, this was as much a part of Christmas as gifts ever were. Now here's the question. Why would a holiday we associate with warmth and wonder ever need a creature like this? And why did he follow the same path as St. Nicholas, the figure who would one day become Santa Claus? Because by the end of this story, you'll understand something unsettling. Santa only works because Krampus once stood beside him. Everyone knows who comes at Christmas now. He wears red, he brings gifts, he judges quietly. But for centuries he was not alone. Christmas was once a paired event, reward followed by punishment, light followed by shadow. And here's the part that changes everything. Krampus was not added later. He was not a parody, he was not a horror twist, he was essential. But to understand why, we have to step into a winter that didn't feel festive. A winter that felt like a sentence. And once you see that winter, you'll see why Krampus had to exist. Modern Christmas teaches us to love winter. Medieval Europe feared it. Winter meant starvation, sickness, roads erased overnight, travelers never returning. Children died quietly in cold houses. Livestock froze in fields. Entire villages shrank by spring. When someone vanished in winter, there was rarely an explanation. Only stories. And in the Alps, winter already had a face. Not a comforting one, not a gentle one. A face that promised only consequence. And the closer you lived to the mountains, the more real it felt. Krampus did not descend from hell. He emerged from places people avoided. Forests where paths vanished. Mountain passes where snow swallowed sound. Edges of villages where light failed. Before Christianity, Alpine communities believed these places belonged to spirits, half animal, half human, tied to seasons, fertility, and punishment. Krampus looked like one of them. Goat horns, cloven hooves, a long animal tongue, chains and bells meant to announce his approach. He wasn't evil, he was seasonal. And then Christianity arrived, and it had to decide what to do with a creature the people already obeyed. Because the church didn't erase Krampus. It did something smarter and far more dangerous. The church could have destroyed Krampus. It didn't, because people still believed in him, still feared him, still obeyed him more than priests. So instead of erasing Krampus, the church made a calculated move. It chained him. Not to eliminate him, but to control him. Krampus was placed beside St. Nicholas. One rewarded obedience, the other punished defiance. Together, they created enforcement, a moral system that worked even when no one was watching. And once you build a system like that, the next question is obvious. What happens when someone breaks the rules? St. Nicholas gave gifts. Krampus carried switches, bundles of birch rods meant for striking skin. In some regions, he carried a sack or basket. Bad children weren't corrected. They were taken. This wasn't metaphor. In winter, children really did vanish. Illness, exposure, accidents no one witnessed. Krampus didn't invent that fear. He explained it. And once fear has a name, it can be passed down, from parent to child, from winter to winter. But the darkest part wasn't the story told at bedtime. It was the night the story walked outside. Every December 5th, the rules broke. Men put on carved wooden masks, snarling mouths, curling horns, faces made wrong on purpose. They wore animal skins. They dragged chains. They rang bells loud enough to shake windows. This was Krampusnacht. They ran. They shouted. They chased. And this is the part most retellings miss. It wasn't chaos. It was permission. Because when you give fear a mask, you can let it do things no one else is allowed to do. Medieval life was rigid. Authority watched constantly. Behavior was policed. Punishment was private but ever present. Krampusnacht inverted that order. Fear became visible. Punishment walked openly. The monster took responsibility for what society could not admit. You can call it tradition. You can call it folklore. But it functioned like something else. It was a pressure valve, a ritualized release of anxiety and violence. Krampus wasn't destabilizing society. He was stabilizing it. And once you understand that, you realize the story has been hiding its real purpose. Krampus was never really about children. He was about adults. He allowed communities to externalize punishment, to project violence and moral enforcement onto something masked, inhuman, and seasonal. Krampus didn't threaten order. He protected it. Which is exactly why the church eventually tried to erase him. Because when a tool becomes too powerful, the tool becomes a rival. By the 17th century, Krampus was inconvenient, too pagan, too violent, too sexual. Masks were banned, parades were shut down. Later, fascist regimes in Austria labeled Krampusnacht degenerate. But suppression didn't kill Krampus. It sharpened him, because he had already slipped into something stronger than tradition. He had slipped into culture. In the 19th century, Krampus reappeared somewhere unexpected. Holiday postcards, printed images showed him beating children, dragging women, leering grotesquely. These weren't hidden, they were mailed. That's the threshold. When a monster becomes something you can buy, it becomes immortal. And once Krampus became immortal, he didn't need the church anymore. For most of American history, Krampus didn't exist. Christmas softened, flattened into pure cheer, no punishment, no fear, only reward. And something felt wrong. A holiday built entirely on goodness without consequence begins to feel unreal. That's when Krampus returned. Not as a relic, as a correction. He resurfaced through horror films, metal music, and folklore revival. Not because people wanted terror, but because they missed honesty. Krampus remembers a time when winter was dangerous, when morality had stakes, when survival wasn't guaranteed, and he reveals something uncomfortable. Santa alone is not enough, because the moment you remove the shadow, the light starts to look like a performance. Every moral system has two parts, reward and enforcement. Santa is generosity. Krampus is consequence. Remove the shadow, and the light feels artificial. And here's the final twist. Santa didn't replace Krampus. He absorbed him. Santa watches. He keeps lists. He judges behavior. The horns vanished. The chains softened. The violence was hidden behind velvet and wrapping paper, but the structure remained. And once you see that structure, you can't unsee it. Which brings us to the next story. Because Santa Claus, the figure we think of as ancient, was engineered. Carefully, deliberately, and for reasons that aren't as cozy as we pretend. Next time, we're tearing Santa Claus apart. We'll trace how a minor saint became a global surveillance myth, how punishment was hidden inside generosity, and how Christmas traded fear for fantasy without ever letting it go. Because once you understand Krampus, you are finally ready to see Santa clearly. And once you see him, you realize he never stopped watching.